Welcome back to Parry Talks. It's been a while between drinks, but grateful to be back on board. With COVID tying over, this might be the last in podcast for a while, but I had to make a little exception for my guest today. She goes by the name of Pretty Girl. If you're tapped into the Australian dance scene, you've no doubt heard her work. Earlier this year, she released one of the best dance songs in the year in Sunphase and followed it up with the stellar Middle Ground EP out now via Gallery. She is by far one of the most requested guests on this show. My DMs have been flying for months. It's been unbearable. People have found my phone number, my address, sending me envelopes, letters saying get PG on the podcast. It's been one of the craziest 6 months for her. Pretty Girl, welcome to Parry Talks. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. Ish. I was just saying before, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather and I'm trying to work out if it's burnout, COVID, or hay fever. So awaiting the PCR test results, it's probably all three.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like it's almost all of the above for everybody at the moment as well. There's obviously like the constant COVID angst, but at the same time, like rundown is like rife. It's pandemic 2.0, like in terms of not, that's probably an overstatement, but it is so rife at the moment of people just being like, holy shit, do the weeks feel longer now than they did before? Like there's definitely like this, it's a new world, I think so to say.
Totally, yeah. And I think this year I'm a lot more, after last year, I'm more aware of the like the ability to become so burned out so quickly after spending 4 months or whatever locked up. It's easy to just lose sight of like your health and to forget about all the things that are important to you and just like go completely off the rails. So
Yeah, and it's such a muscle thing as well. Like I've definitely found that like the shit I used to do and doing it again now, in terms of not like crazy shit, just like going out and like someone messaging me like, do you want to go for a drink tonight? It's like, yes, I do. Versus now it's like it's such a training the muscle of energy and like social interaction, I think. And yeah, it's just I just need to train it back up.
Yeah, me too. But I do want to have more of a balance than I did last year. Because last year, it's like as soon as dance floors were open, I just feel like I really hit the ground running and I was playing so many DJ sets and like just meeting all these new people and like having so much fun. But at the same time, I like really burnt out. Um, and then I like really struggled towards the middle of the year. So I'm hoping this year I'll do it a bit more gradually.
Definitely. How was that feeling for you going back out for the first time, like going out again? I felt like for me, it was so weird because there was so much hype leading into like the week of being like, I've got tickets to this thing. Like, I'm so excited. It's our first night back out. But then like once I got into the line, I was like, oh, it's business as usual. I felt like nothing had changed. How did you feel it for you?
Yeah, I did feel that on some level. I think the novelty wore off really, really quickly. And I think also like the reduced capacity clubs and everything sort of put a bit of a dampener on the whole experience. Cause I don't know if you guys had that in Sydney, but we had like the 50-person dance floors and it was just a bit like, oh, okay, like why is everyone so awkward?
Yeah. Well, we're still at the legally now, it's like dance floors are like in between a third and a quarter capacity still for nightclubs.
Oh, okay. That
So it's like
sucks.
it doesn't make any it because like you can go to a pub and it's like pretty normal inside a pub, but like once
Mm.
it's a nightclub, it's like no, you're not allowed to go ham or like fill a venue. So there's still that like very eerie in between period still.
Yeah, I think it's so hard for most people to, because I guess like a big part of the clubbing experience is like being able to let go and like being lost in the crowd. And when you're in a club where they're relying more on the like smoke machine to fill the room than anything else, like it just really you don't get that sort of cathartic release. You feel very like self-conscious and conspicuous. So I just remember I went to Color when there was like a 50-person limit, and it really sucked because they sold tickets for both the rooms, but only like the room that was actually going late could only have a 50% capacity. So
Yeah,
we were like locked in there because we were like, we can't go out. We won't be able to go back in. So yeah, it was just like a bit of a weird, eerie feeling of like having like at least a meter's distance between another dancer and just like a bit of like a palpable like self-consciousness in the air.
definitely. And that's why forever open air parties are the greatest, objectively for me.
Yeah, totally. I
Like I don't
agree.
know where you stand on that, or if you have a strong opinion on it, but like there's definitely something like so beautiful about like a late club night or like a early morning, like, or warehouse send. But like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there's like I feel like that's when the not a care in the world sort of part comes into it the most.
Definitely, yeah. And like as I sort of went through my, like, as I got more and more, I guess, attuned to partying, I started appreciating those moments more. Less, I think you just like, at first, it was more about going into a dark room and, getting lost in the sub bass and, not really knowing what's going on. And you kind of feel like, you blend in and everything, and you're like, yeah, as I said, in the darkness. And then I started to appreciate that whole open air 4 p.m. sun coming down on you thing. Yeah,
But then
I
again,
wrote a whole song about it.
and we'll talk about it. But for me, there's nothing better than, and you're from Melbourne, you know about this. Sydney, it's a bit more rare. The parties that, will have, the from, the midnight to midday parties, the greatest things in the world. So like you get someone playing like crazy minimal from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then after 8 a.m., everyone walks into like a courtyard and it's like, oh, the sun rises. Like that is the most pure feeling in the world, I think.
Yeah, I actually haven't been to a party like that. I've been to a 24-hour party where all the windows were blacked out at lounge. So that had much more of like a demonic hedonistic element. um, the whole like 8 a.m. wow, I'm so happy I'm here thing, that doesn't really happen for me that much, I have to admit. If it's 8 a.m., I'm normally like, oh my God, why did I do it again?
Well, yeah, I talk about, and I think everyone reflects on this one experience in this city most recently, like
Yeah.
seeing Kia into Waxo Paradiso from like 6 a.m. until midday just changed my life.
Yeah, it looked like a very spiritual dance event. So I saw videos and I was like, fuck, that looks amazing.
Yeah, I think I posted about it like 18 times as
Yeah.
well. Um, but to talk about you, because it's your podcast effectively, last year you did hint at going out a lot. I want to dive more into that from, not a hedonistic standpoint, but a, awakening standpoint. Um, what do you think the most learning you did about either dance music or dance music cultures or just anything in that world? What did that period of time open your eyes to?
Oh, it made me feel so much more connected to other people than I ever had before. And it really sort of like was such an eye-opening experience to how everyone is very similar, and like the experience of like a lot of empathy that you have with other people. And I think also the lack of judgment for the most part that exists in like the electronic music scene, it just really revolutionized like the way I felt about myself. And like, because when I was in high school, I was, I like struggled socially and I never really felt like anyone understood me. And, I went to like a private girls' school. And so there were all these really tense social sort of faux pas and all these expectations of everyone. And then I remember the first night I went out, I went to Revolver. um, and I was just like, I was so shocked at the fact that there were all these people just wanting to meet me and say hi, and everyone was so friendly and on drugs, but like it was I just felt so shocked at like how open everybody was and how like accepted I felt in a room of complete strangers. And that just totally changed. You know, I started seeing myself as just like so much more similar to everyone else around me, and like that these people or this culture understood me. And that's like on a personal level, definitely the effect that it had on my life. And then, you know, I've met some of my best friends through this like culture or this genre, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that
Um,
make any sense? I
yeah, that
was
made
so
like
out of it.
it made like perfect sense.
Good.
Um, where was your taste at during that period? Where did you already enjoy that type of music and then you found your place for it, or were you an eager, ready to open your eyes child effectively, and that's where your learning began for your just general music listening and general music taste?
Well, I have always had a taste for dance music in all its forms, but I just never really knew what it was. I didn't know how to look for it. I just knew that there was some types of music that just made me feel a really special way. But when I was like socializing in high school, and like especially when I was developing my own taste in music, no one at my high school listened to dance music. It was actually like sort of looked down upon. And so I remember with that first night that I went out to Revs, I was like, oh my God, like this is the music that I like and that I've liked for so long on this huge speaker system, and everyone here is loving it. And it just all sort of fit together for me in that moment. Like I just really felt like I mean, I don't really listen to Revs music anymore, but you know, just the experience of being in that sort of environment with that energy really connected something in my brain that I always knew was there, but I never like could have I was never able to access it.
Yeah. Um, don't listen to Revs music anymore. As someone that's never been to Revs, I'm not going to judge you for that. But I think that glory phase in entering a scene is like the most beautiful time I think ever, because it's before all the pressure and the social dynamics and the social
Yeah.
climbing. It feels like they're just like being a baby is just so beautiful and pure, and yeah, it's just such a wholesome experience, because I feel like so many people reflect on the exact experience that you had, which is like so
Yeah.
wholesome and beautiful.
Yeah,
um
it truly was like a spiritual night for me. Um and yeah, even though like now I'm sure that if I went to Revs on that same night, I would be like, what is this tribal house music? I
that this
like,
white dude's playing.
yeah, exactly. um, I uh like I feel that even if I went back now with my standards and my knowledge now, I probably wouldn't enjoy it. It still really sticks in my mind as such a like, which is one of the best nights of my life.
Definitely, that's so beautiful. The best night of my life.
Yeah.
um what sort of music were you making around that time? Were you making music around that time? Was making music something that was on your mind during that time?
Yeah, I was that was back in my garage band days. So I was making like a breed of sort of like dream bedroom pop. Um I was really inspired by
Clairo.
I wish I was like cool enough to know Clara back then. I was really inspired by like the 1975. I love the 1975. I was like listening to them today. um and that sort of like really expository lyrical thing. And I would just like make all these songs about my feelings and post them on SoundCloud and like look to see who was listening to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. And how much do you think, not just that specific night, but you obviously kept going out and you kept engaging and kept socializing and doing all these things, um how formative do you think those further experiences were in eventually manifesting into the EP that you have made today?
um Well, I'd say very formative, because the EP is supposed to be sort of like a journal or like a expository account of past 4 years of my life, or the past 4 years of my life 1 year ago. And there were a lot of experiences I had throughout that time, because it's a really tumultuous and like chaotic time, from when you're like 18 to 22.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think there were a lot of experiences within those years that that contributed to the kind of melancholy, sad tone of the EP, but also a sort of journey into adolescence.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think about that, and I wonder if you reflect on this as well, where I feel like I've learned so much over the past couple of years just about myself and my taste and my friends and all these things. And I feel like weirdly settled now. And I can't tell if being sort of settled and comfortable, when I was used to so much rapid change, like makes me anxious or not. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think about that too. I think about the fact that things are always changing. I'm always like, I tend to get really analytical and really reflective and really sort of strategic. And, I'm constantly like strategizing about, who I want to spend time with and like where I want to be and what I want to do. And I feel like it's sort of a hedonic treadmill in some way, because I'm like, if I'm not always chasing after something to be improved in my life, like if I get there, like, will I actually be happy?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Do you like, and I guess everyone's so different in this, and I've been having these conversations a lot about grind culture, like about whether with work or with, socially, or like with like a passion project or whatever, where I feel very inclined to like be like, I don't want to sit at my desk and have nothing going on. Like, because that just makes me feel weird. Like, I never watch movies or TV shows because of that. Because I just feel like I'd rather just be working. So this sort of started as a lighthearted question, but I guess it's pretty serious now. Like, do you think you're like more of like the grind type, or do you like having very on and off moments in work, in life?
It's a difficult question to answer, honestly, because I feel that I really oscillate between being like 100% focused, grinding, blah, 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 and then just being like a complete mess. And I think that there is a lot of pressure to constantly be on all the time and to be, working towards something amazing, and everyone has to have their thing. And, you've got to, also doing one thing isn't enough. Like, you've got to differentiate, you've got to make a zine, you've got to like run a charity, like, I think social media definitely contributes to it, because there is this idea that like everyone is constantly, grinding, getting that bread.
Definitely.
I think it gets toxic. Like, productivity definitely isn't, like, I think it's good to be productive, but I think that if all you're aiming for in life is productivity, it's very like spiritually disenfranchising.
Definitely. And I think the funny thing about engaging in our world, this might be such like an insular conversation to someone listening, being like, I just want to know what pretty girls like. But we're just talking about like our personal deep thoughts.
Like, when I'm alone at night, sometimes I just think, am I good enough?
I think about it's so much crazier in music cultures, where I feel like in my most sacred times, which for me is going out and dancing to music, there's almost an element of like, this is technically work. Like, I could technically write about this, or I could technically cover this, or I could technically think about this from a work standpoint. It's like, oh, this DJ's sick, I wonder what their fee is. Or I wonder if they're available in the city for the next fortnight. Or I wonder if they want to do a podcast. So do you get that thing of like, now it's almost like you're like living a dream almost, but sometimes that dream can become numb because it's like, it's hard to turn off?
Totally. And like, this is something that I've recently been feeling a bit conflicted about, is like, I'm missing, like, going back to what we were talking about before, that whole like being a baby in the world of electronic music. I'm missing that sort of that sparkle and that euphoria and that, pure pleasure around music and, events and like engaging with music, because now I'm so consumed constantly thinking about, you know, like myself as an artist, but also about all of the factors in the industry.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just all this like just stupid stuff all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So this conversation doesn't get too grim.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm gonna like no for both of us, because now I'm thinking about like, oh, it's 6 o'clock on a Monday night, and I'm like doing this podcast that makes me no money anyway. But I'm joking. I'm joking. I think an interesting thing that I've noticed a lot about you is just talking about the idea of a live show. And so much in the past year has changed for you with your career and, you know, your fans and your space and all that stuff. But you haven't really had an opportunity to perform live in so long. Have you had any big revelations about the idea of performing live or your live set itself throughout lockdown that you're just like so angsty to get out?
Do you mean as in like the uh, things I will be doing in the live set, or like my attitude towards the live set?
I think both. I think, yeah, your
Mm.
attitude to what performing live is, as well as like just things you're changing and things you're evolving into.
Yeah, I have been working on the live set sort of nonstop. Um, and because I just like to put it on and just pretend I'm playing it live. Um, so it's definitely going to be a lot more upbeat. And then in terms of what I'm going to do, I don't know. I've been adding new songs to it, and I've been sort of like weeding through it and looking at the way the energy flows throughout the set. But I've been thinking about incorporating hardware, but I just thinking, I haven't actually done anything towards that.
Definitely. Talk through the inspo behind having a live set, like from the beginning, from having stalked you for this interview. Like you've been doing live sets for a long time. So many electronic artists, and this isn't a critique at all, are very focused on the idea of having a pristine DJ set, which I think is beautiful, and both have their own perks and benefits. But talk through that motivation, even initially and to now, of the live set being like a crux of, you know, when people see Pretty Girl live, they're seeing a live set. Like, why is that so important to you?
Well, deciding to do a live set in the beginning wasn't even really a decision for me. I just had always made music, and I'd always been a singer and a
True.
performer. So I think that, you know, I bought a MIDI keyboard and I just said like, okay, I'll do a live set. And then I remember I got asked to do a DJ set in like 2019, like a long time ago. And I remember saying like, sorry, I can't DJ. I can only play live. Like I didn't buy decks until like maybe 6 months later. So it wasn't really a conscious decision, but it has really contributed to what I think Pretty Girls become now.
Definitely. That's so interesting. I'm going to pause and take a break because I desperately need to go to the toilet.
Yeah, that's fine. I need to put on a t-shirt. It's so hot in here, or I have a fever.
And we're back. Sorry if there was a little weird cut or pause there. Just talking about the live set, and you built a lot of momentum around the project without, oh, this is going to sound so horrible, and
No.
you can pay me out for this, without doing like a whole lot, because it was lockdown and it was just such a weird time. Last year and this year, a couple remixes and that, but there was so much momentum building up to Sunface, like the viral snippet, as they say. And even though it wasn't technically your debut single, it definitely felt like a big breakthrough moment per se, where it's like PG is here and she's here to stay. What do you think the main difference was for you, the music you were creating before Sunphase and then leading into Sunphase and with Sunphase was, you know, what changed in your attitude, your music creating abilities for you to reach this almost like crescendo of like, this makes sense for my project?
Yeah, I mean, I think writing Sunphase did encourage me to sort of trust myself more as a producer, because you know, it's so hard when you're a young producer, especially, like, not to get into identity stuff, but especially when you're a young woman,
No,
you know.
don't say not to get into it. Like
Okay.
this is the time.
Okay. Well, it's very hard being a young producer and, constantly having these doubts about your abilities and constantly having these doubts about like your capacity to build those abilities as well. Because especially, when you listen to music, you're listening to music that is not just made by professionals, but has been mixed and mastered by professionals, has had lots of input from other creators. You're listening to this like highly, this this really well-made music, and then to compare that to your like dog shit demos is can be a really like challenging, it's a big challenge on your self-esteem. But I think when I made Sunphase, I felt that I had a bit more agency as a producer, and I think that the response that people have given it has just been out of this world, and it's really made me feel a lot more confident and a lot more sort of capable.
Definitely. And you touched on it, so I'm going to dive in head first. And you might not feel a big type of way about it, but I think it's important to ask anyway. Like the music industry generally is like overtly sexist, like structurally, just with the way who works at labels and who releases music and who the A&Rs are and who does this and who does that, who the promoters are, you name it. Just like there's a lot of visible things that aren't good enough in the music industry. What sort of like, how do you think that affected your either motivation, your idea of yourself, your idea of yourself as a producer? Like, were there any tangible things that you could definitely take away from, you building your confidence being a non-male?
I think that I, in a lot of ways, have been inspired by the fact that there's little representation and like the fact that it is such a boys' club. Because I mean, ever since I was a child, like I've really enjoyed um, uh, challenging gender stereotypes in the like, I always used to play footy when I was like, every time we did inter-school sports when I was a kid, I'd be like, I'm doing footy. Just to, I don't know, because I guess when I recognize that something may be abnormal or, not, it's not abnormal, but like, you know what I mean? It's like unusual for a woman to do a certain thing. I feel really inspired to do it. And I think that comes from my upbringing. Like my mum was the first surgeon of her specialty in Australia. And so I think that sort of like it's bled into me really feeling the need to challenge stereotypes.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Mrs. Girl.
Yeah. It's actually Dr. Girl.
Oh yeah, true. Dr. Girl. That sounds
Dr. Professor Girl.
That sounds so cool, but like your last name, is actually Girl. People don't understand that. Like,
no, my first name is Pretty, my last name is Girl.
People always like, I love the change in conversation because I'm an idiot. But like people always like, oh, how'd you get your your artist name? It's like, that's my name.
Artist name? Bitch. It's Pretty
From
Girl.
My parents. Imagine your name is actually Pretty Girl.
People might give you a bit of shit for it being contrived. I don't know, or conceited.
My daughter's middle name one day is going to be like
PG.
Whatever, PG. On Sunface, what was that feel? I can't imagine, like, because I'm no artist. I've done the record label thing a little bit and I get a bit nervous before releases, but what was that feeling like night before Sunface came out? Like, was it hype? Was it energy? Was it tension? Was it anxiety? Was it confidence? Just I can't imagine what was going through your head.
I think that I didn't expect much from it. I think given the response that it had, it would be fair to assume that I was like very anxious or very like I was what's the word? Like I was like, waiting. I was
a lot of pent up energy.
Yeah. But I think, I was just like, got a song out tomorrow, might go really well, could get 1,000 plays.
Yeah.
You know, I did not expect in any way the response that it had. So it I was shocked, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the natural follow-up question to that is, and I think it's super interesting that it came the way it did with the narrative of your project and, where it's come to now. But why didn't you think Sunface fit on the EP?
Why didn't I think it fit
Yeah.
on the EP? Um, yeah, I mean, I think it was a standalone song always. And I think it was like sonically very different to the other songs that are on the EP. And I think that it meant something very different to me. It was I'd made it for a different reason. So it didn't, if I would tell a story with middle ground, Sunface wasn't really going to be part of that
And like,
story.
we can cut this part of the conversation
Yeah.
out if you want. No, this next
Mask
question.
off.
Was there pressure externally for it to be on the EP and to exist on the EP, and for it to be like, this big music industry strategy, like this is your single, it has to be on the EP?
Not really. No.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, Angus, it's going to be on the vinyl, because that's sort of like a deluxe
Yeah,
thing. But
deluxe.
yeah.
I love that. It's just the greatest word of all time.
I agree. It's a really nice word. But yeah, no, there was no external pressure to include it, which is good.
Well, I guess that follows on to my next question. Or a question I had in the future, but we can ask it now because it makes sense. Is like, and we'll talk about the whole timeline of everything, but how was it finding a home for the EP? Because I imagine that's such an important part for you, finding an appropriate home for the EP. Just like, what was that process like? Was that a pretty stressful part, do you think, of the whole recording and, release of it? Just like, what were you thinking about when you were trying to find that home for it?
When you say the home, do you mean the label?
Yeah, like label,
Okay, cool.
the world that it was going to exist in.
Yeah, I mean, that part of it was really stressful because I felt so inexperienced and so juvenile, and I felt like I was needing to make these big decisions, and also these decisions that carried a lot of weight. And there's so many factors that go into it, like, I had to seriously start thinking about, well, I've made this music, I'm really proud of it. I can't just say yes to any label. I need to give it the home that it deserves. And all of that music industry stuff is really challenging, I found, especially because I was like, I'm 21.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little baby. How am I supposed to decide this stuff? Like, can't I just give it to someone and then they make it really dope and famous? Like, like, what the hell? So yeah, that part of it I do struggle with. And I think especially in the initial stages, because I really do now back my music, and I really do see it like ultimately like carrying me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Driving.
Yeah, I do see it like going somewhere really good. But I guess at the time it was kind of scary because it was in the interim phase of like, well, what if no one actually likes it?
Yeah. True.
Which is, it's hard.
And how was it almost letting go of it, both from a creative point of view of, I think this is finished, and then to someone else, it being in their hands and being like, so you're going to release it? Like, holy shit. Like, how was that process of letting go of like your almost baby and then it being out in the world? Like, how was that for you?
I think there's a little bit of hesitation and doubt, definitely. I remember messaging Angus and being like, are these songs even good?
Angus
of
Gallery.
Of
Gallery fame.
Yes. And like, yeah, it's so tricky because when you finally do send off those masters, you're really putting a piece of yourself out there to be judged and critiqued. And, once it's out there, you can't take it back. And so it's really scary. And you do have to sort of surrender to the idea that, you know, you're really exposing a part of yourself, both like, you know, in terms of yourself as a producer, but also like yourself as a person.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What sort of context drove the title of the EP? Like, it's a pretty shit. I hate asking like, where'd you get the name from? But like, I'm asking like, where'd you get the name from? Because a lot of people will just go with the title track for a dance EP and not sort of think about the title as much as they would think about the track titles. But yeah, what led to Middle Ground being appropriate for the music?
I think that one thing that I really, a style of thinking or a mindset that I always try to embody, but it's the one that I was focusing a lot on whilst writing the EP, was the idea of you know, a gray area or dialectical thinking, and you know, finding a middle ground in conflict or in yourself. So I think that really, it was a major theme that I was constantly thinking about when I was writing the EP. And so it just seemed like the right thing to call it.
Definitely. And like, having followed you for a little while, it's super interesting to see it as middle ground, as like, even though the sound and your sound is now very well established, as this almost like transitional from like, here's everything you might know about me, and this is like a really much like, this is me now. And then now it's just like the perfect platform almost like to begin to build. So I think that's like why it resonates so much with me, I think, that title.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah.
And then after that, like, what was the feeling like after the EP came out and you sort of sat with it and it was comfortable existing in the world? You know, was it elation at a certain point? Was it celebration? Or was it almost like this cursed anxiety, and that still sits with you almost?
Absolutely, the cursed anxiety. I think that just like a birthday, actually, and it's funny because it was my birthday, you have all this anticipation and you think it's going to be amazing, and then you get on the day and you're kind of a bit despondent, and you're like, you feel a little bit empty, and you feel like it's hard to actually conceptualize what it means to have that out there. And yeah, I still am sort of, it's also hard because like I feel like it's such a personal record or such a personal like series of songs, so having it out there does make me feel a little bit exposed.
Definitely. Was there like, but there must have been a point where it was like, where you felt like, yeah, I'm on my shit. Like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I, like, just like everything, finding the middle ground here. You know, there's times when it like I truly do like, it's really amazing after, you know, thousands of emails and, you know, all this drama about blah blah blah, you know, label stuff. It is amazing to go on my Spotify and like see Middle Ground EP just sitting there. And you know, it's the support that it's received has just been phenomenal. So definitely, like, there's just a bit of everything. Like, there's that elation and that the self-assurance of, you know, saying like, I've done my thing, and there's the like there's the completed feeling, the satisfaction.
Definitely.
And but then there's also the like the doubt and the like anxious attachment style.
Definitely.
Anxious avoidant attachment style. So,
and I think this is a perfect follow-up question. I'm very on myself as an interviewer today as well. I'm killing it. But we do live in such a bubble in the Australian dance music scene. Like, everyone knows everyone's, like, even between cities, like, everyone's besties apparently with everybody. And don't flame me because I know someone's listening that's going to be like, I'm your bestie. And your EP released at such a unique time in the world with COVID, where it almost, you didn't have that real factor of like, you know, seeing the world to continue to spin around you. And it would have been quite hard, I imagine, for you to stay grounded, both in reflecting on your anxiety and the stress, but also with the celebration and, you know, the idea of ego.
totally.
Do you think much about being the idea of being grounded and, staying focused and holding your perspective, like, what do you do to combat the idea of ego and infatuation with like this crazy scene culture?
Um, it's a really good question. And I'm glad that we're talking about like the ego of the scene culture, because I think it's definitely there. It's definitely present and it's palpable. And it's frustrating that it doesn't get spoken about on like a very surface level. I I've got my own plethora of like self-esteem issues, so I don't think I ever really.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. But that's how I think I do stay grounded in a lot of ways. Is that like I don't think that it's like I could ever really get like a big head or like see myself as like superior in any way, because like I do stay really self-deprecating. And that having that mindset of, like you're good, but you're not that good.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. And I think it's something that like does keep me stable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think people dissect enough the cult elements of underground scenes generally, not just dance music, any sort of underground scene. If you look at underground rap scenes, underground punk scenes, whatever, there's this constant like, I don't know, it's like it's almost, it mirrors the cults almost, in terms of like, we are the most important thing in the world when there's like, you're selling 200 tickets to a house to a party, and it's like, oh, it's just super interesting to try and dissect that and keep that perspective of, yes, it's important to keep these spaces and have these epic moments, but like almost at what cost sometimes. And yeah, I don't think it gets spoken about enough, like just the general pressure and anxiety and stress that comes with this idea of an underground culture. And like, it's super crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think underground culture does breed that sort of superiority complex in people, because it is exclusive by definition. And so when you have this subculture that's driven by the like its exclusion to the rest of pop culture, it does make a lot of room for a lot of like snobbery and like wankers, to be perfectly honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think I just think remembering why you want to do it is the most important facet for me. Like remembering why you love it, remembering why you're there, trying to connect with people on that level. Because at the end of the day, like, who cares what exclusive club you went to, or like what doof you were at, or like who you've DM'd on Instagram? Like it truly is like very irrelevant at the end of the day. And I try to also notice if I'm getting a little bit I try to stay conscious of those traits in myself, and then just like make a joke about it.
Definitely. Yeah. And just like true. I don't even know. I just want to say true. Like, it's so true.
Yeah.
And like, it's good. It's good you're doing that. It's good you're doing that.
Thanks.
One thing I forgot about, and we'll dive back into the creative process on the EP, and utilizing vocals is a unique thing. And obviously your early work, and that's how you started as like someone that, vocal lines led your music. And now they drive the tracks, your music now in such a different way, but they're just as potent. Just how have you thought about using your vocals over the years on tracks? And, how has your idea of the value of a vocal changed over time? And, where does it sit now?
I really, really hate singing on my own tracks, because it is like, I think that anybody who plays an instrument or sings can relate to this, where it truly, listening to yourself sing, or making mistakes, will truly like decimate your ego. So I have over the years taken the focus away from having like a orthodox lyrical structure, and move sort of towards using my voice as an instrument, and like using it for vocal texture. And I think in dance music, that is always the kind of music that I'm really drawn to, the kind of vocal style that I'm really drawn to. I think it's quite obvious and a bit conspicuous when someone's pushing too hard for there to be vocals on their track, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it can really make the track feel a bit cheap if the vocals aren't in the right style or the right feel. So I try to focus on making sure that they complement the track in the most ideal way.
Definitely. And can you believe it? We've been speaking for nearly an hour now. Told you,
I
time
actually
flies.
can't. Yeah.
I guess to sort of wrap up the EP talk before we start talking about the future, what do you think the most rewarding or challenging song was to write?
The Only Way Out Is Through was probably the most labor intensive song. It's quite a complex song, I guess, like as in it moves through a lot of
It's complex.
It's really complex, you wouldn't get it. But it moves through a lot of different phases throughout the song, and it's 8 minutes long. And there's a lot of, I was sort of learning how to use different techniques, and also learning how to use my Moog sub 37. So I think that because I was learning at the same time as putting the song together, it was sort of like a twofold in the like me gaining the skills to use while simultaneously working them in with the track.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then to sort of cap up the EP on in a really nice way, what do you think the most wholesome or like tear-jerking thing has been in since its release? Like what's just stood out to you as like, oh damn, this is really nice?
I mean, I've received like a wave of affirmative, like beautiful messages from people that's been really, really lovely. Like my family's all listened to it, and like all of my colleagues at work have listened to it. So it's been really nice and wholesome. I remember one of my friends, when I saw her on my birthday, she said, because Empathy is a song that I've been working on for like nearly 3 years now. And she said that she was really happy to see Empathy in there, and that it felt like the final, like it felt like closing the book on the story behind it. So I thought that was really cute.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's been pretty go. And now we're going to get into some of the silly questions, because we had a lot of fan questions come in.
Oh my God, yes.
99% of them were, is she single? Like what? It happens every single time. Like from people that you're friends with as well. Like from everyone, just like, is she single?
To other artists? Surely to other artists.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time.
All right, okay, good.
Like it's like I just put something up like every time I put up like ask this person, are they single? It's like, it's not your business. All right, this isn't the Parry Talk business. But a couple good ones. Paul Coppola asked, weirdest club interactions.
God. Oh, I don't. Oh, this this one night I was out at Sub Club, and I was quite drunk, and I'd been drunk all day. And I was just like, it was Ben Your Folk B2B with Moopy, and I was just like, just waddling around the stage, just like completely alone. I don't know where my friends were. I was just like, and someone was like, is that Pretty Girl? And I turned around and I was like, no, not right now. Run away.
Not now, bestie.
Not now, bestie.
You can take your pictures later. Yeah.
No, not as in dismissive, like don't even talk to me right now. I was like, I'm not Pretty Girl right now. like
this Mimo Kota, this random dude, shout out to him, Mimo Kota 97 asks, and this is probably like a producer head question because I can't translate this. What's on her mix bus usually? Is that the right word to say it? Mix bus?
Mix bus. So I'm probably gonna upset some like massive producer heads out there, but I don't mix my own music, really. I don't have a mix bus. I mean, at the risk of sounding kind of uneducated, I feel like there are like several things that a mix bus can be. Like it can just be like a channel in Ableton. It can also be like a series of hardware that you use. But yeah, I keep it really simple by sending it off to an engineer.
Beautiful. These ones make more sense to me.
Okay.
Rosie Tilly, shout out to Rosie Tilly, asks, how did you learn to produce?
Thank you for the great question, Rosie. I learned to produce through YouTube. I've never done any sort of like official course or anything like that. I got on YouTube and I would look up specific things that I wanted to learn in Ableton. I never did like a beginner's guide to Ableton video because they're always just really obnoxious and annoying. But I would like go in and specifically look up a question like how do you make audio come out? And then I guess I kind of I took my time with it. It takes a really long time to learn how to make music. So I think if you're interested, just find a digital audio workstation that works for you, whether that be like Logic or GarageBand or Ableton, if you dare, or Fruity Loops. and like be curious as well. Like, and also don't go in with the attitude that you're immediately going to make amazing music because you're probably not. I definitely didn't.
Beautiful. My boy, this person, Ryan Cruhan or Croyhan, I don't know how to say names, asks, what's the favorite set you've ever played?
The first time I debuted my new live set, I played it at this little doof called Out of Range. And that was really, really fun. Some of my friends haven't really heard my live set before and they were all like quite shocked. And that was really nice. And I also I kind of like a really fun, stupid DJ set. Like I've played some DJ sets where I just end up playing like Sugar Babes or like Alexis Jordan. And those tend to be my favorite sets because it's just really fun to get a crowd going.
Definitely. And this is like the last question that I got. I don't know if this is like an inside joke or this is just a really weird question, but it's from Chechi, good friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
He asks, do you like School of Rock or The Grinch?
I don't know if that would be an inside joke. We're talking about the movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like which one do I prefer, or is it like do I like either of them?
We should just pass on it. We need to show him that is garbage.
Yeah.
And because I need to stay in a job. If all the fans keep asking good questions, and I'm out of a job.
Yeah, true.
And then my final question that I ask everyone this: you're hungover. My set 2 questions to go. You're hungover, you're hungry, you're just starving, and you want something grubby. You just want to like be a grub for this moment in time for lunch the next morning, the next day, lunchtime, that time. What's your go-to takeaway? It can be like a local takeaway or it can be like a big chain takeaway. Like what's the meal? What's the PG grub meal?
I honestly, when I wake up really hungover and like thinking I'm going to die and like need to be taken to hospital, my favorite thing to eat is chicken broth. Like, I know I'll wake up and be like, I need pho. Like, I just like wonton noodle soup or like a vegetable pho or like I've got a container of my nonna's like chicken broth in the freezer at the moment. And like that truly is what I crave because it's salty and hot and like I get really nauseous, so I can't eat like a big disgusting hamburger. So
it's funny because 90, I reckon legit 90% of my favorite meat eating alumni say KFC. Like everyone says KFC and I'm like, same bestie. Correct answer.
Yeah. Well, So I did one time get KFC after being out all night. And where I used to live in Reservoir, I was like walking distance from the KFC. And I just walked up there like in my Crocs, like put on the wrong foot and like I'm like barely functioning. And I was like, I hadn't really like eaten KFC before. So I had to stand there for like 20 minutes working out like, what the fuck is all of this? And then I got home and I spilled gravy all over my sheets. And I was like, well, it is what it is.
And then final question, which is, I think I should have prepped you on this. I normally prep people on this, so I'm sorry in advance. And it is a tough question. I do apologize for saying it, but I like to look for new guests on Parry Talks, of course. We need to keep this thing up and running. So just wondering, who do you think would be good for this platform? Who would be great to talk to? Who deserves to speak their truth on Parry Talks?
Really should have prepared me. I'm scared.
It doesn't have to be one person. It can just be like these people.
Yeah. Let me think about it. I think that there are younger or sort of newer DJs on the block that are, and like I'm conscious that I'm really young as well. So like this isn't me being like Mother Dark says that this little chick. I think someone who really does like they're a fantastic DJ, but also they really do, I think, like their attitude and their like passion for dance music, and I think they're truly going to be someone who is like a cornerstone of the Melbourne scene is Priya. I think from like the conversations that I've had with them, like they are very like, and this is what I mean when I say like the new DJs of the scene is like they're very fresh faced. They're not weighed down by all of this like industry stuff that we've been talking about. And I think that it's good to lift people up that aren't already like so embroiled and like weighed down in the industry and what it means. And so yeah, I think if you were to interview Priya, that would be a really good interview.
Beautiful. And shout out to them.
Yeah, shout out to Priya.
This has been Parry Talks. This is Pretty Girl. Go stream the EP. Go buy the vinyl soon, I assume. There'll be a tour soon as well, I assume. So come to that. If you see me at the Sydney show, say hello. Why not? Just come down, and I assume it's coming unannounced. And I don't have any inside info on this. I'm not spoiling anything, but one day PG will play in Sydney. And if you see me there and you say, I listened that far into that interview, I'll buy you a drink. Other than that, thank you so much for coming on. We do appreciate your time on this Tuesday, Thursday afternoon. But yeah, any final words, any final shout outs, or I don't know, anything that you need to get off your chest? Anything you want to sell?
Thanks everyone for myself. No, thanks everyone for listening to me. I don't know what I've said for the past hour, so I hope it was good.